Welcome to Military Wife, Life, and Strife, the podcast where we get open and honest about all the struggles of military life. And welcome to the community that has your back no matter what. Come get real about this strife with me, your host, a military wife. My name is Heather, and today I want to get real with my friend AJ. I'm very excited to have AJ on the show. She was in the military, she's now retired, and she has some incredible stories to share. She has such a beautiful heart for helping people, and she is so filled with faith. I mean, you will feel it through the sound waves. She is so full of faith and joy, and I adore her so much. I'm so excited for you all to get to hear from her. Let's welcome on AJ. Hi, AJ. Welcome to Military Wife, Life, and Strife. I'm excited to have you on here and share your story a little bit. How are you connected to the military?
I am retired from the military. I served 24 years and 9 months to include 2 years of National Guard time before I came active duty. And I am currently, it looks like I'm planted at Fort Polk, where my active duty journey actually began. And it wasn't planned, but this was actually my first duty station back in 1996, coming
Oh,
active duty from my National Guard unit in Mississippi.
okay. I was going to ask, I knew that it
Uh,
was like a full circle you had gone through, and I was going to ask how long that circle was. So in 1996, you were stationed at Fort Polk. And then when did you
Not
end
from
up coming back here?
1996. I got back, we came back in 2010. I was a second year, I was a part two, phase two PA student. The intention was to finish up my PA school here and then go and get
Okay.
stationed somewhere else. But it would just so happen that the unit here had an opening and they needed me. At the time, Nolan's mom was alive. My husband's mom was alive, and she was in New Orleans. And Nolan said that if we could stay close to here and to take care of her, that would probably be for the best. Still didn't have any intention on staying or retiring for that matter.
Let's jump to what's your favorite thing about the military life in your years of service in and out? What's been your favorite thing?
Yeah, I mean, I have like a lot of experiences that I could share, but overall, I can see God using the military to make me who I am. I've always said that being a soldier made me a better Christian, and being a Christian made me a better soldier. And so I love my military career. I got to do a lot. It fit me. I would describe myself as I have a short attention span, and I could not see myself doing the same thing for 20 years in one spot. And so the military was really ideal because when I first came in, I was a dental tech. And I didn't have any plans in staying in, but I could share some of the things that happened. But through God's leading, I ended up re-enlisting again. And when I re-enlisted, I was able to get another job because I was quite bored with being a dental tech. Um, I enlisted to be reclassify as a medical maintenance technician, where I got to work on medical equipment, deployed once as a medical maintenance technician, in charge of the shop out there. Um, when I got back, I was selected by the Army to actually teach my MOS at the AIT. So I taught for about 2 years, and I was inspired to apply for PA school. And so I spent my last
Wow.
10 years in the military as a PA. And so, what I loved about the military is it gave me so much diversity, so many lessons that God showed me. I'm a hands-on, kind of touch. I have to put my hands on it to learn. And so
Yeah.
God allowed me to experience, to show me who He was, and it taught me how to depend on Him and showed me His goodness, His strength, His power, His timing. It just taught me a lot about who God is and who I am and who He's preparing me to be.
Wow. That's really cool. And I love the way you say that, for someone with a short attention span, the military is perfect because you get to try lots of different things and you can change position. I know for us, my husband has changed position many, many times, even changed MOS. And yeah, it's great that the military has so many opportunities for people. It's very they need all kinds of skill sets. So it's great
Yes.
that you get to also practice lots of skill sets. But that's really cool. So
And I didn't
how
plan any of it. I didn't plan any of it. It just, his leading. I didn't even plan on staying in past my first free enlistment.
really?
But I ended up from here, got orders to Korea, which had it not been for me staying in Korea, fast forward 1 year, going on 12 months in Korea, it's time for me to come back. However, I have less than 6 months left on my contract. Like I said, it wasn't my idea to re-enlist, but because I did not want to stay 6 months more over there, I
Yeah.
ended up extending. And so,
Okay.
you know, in order to get stationed at Fort Bliss, I encountered some challenges that just changed my perspective on what I can do. Mediocre was like my middle name prior to I had a bout of anemia, and this was actually causing me to fail in physical training standards. And long story short, it was a long battle. I almost got kicked out of the army. But at the last minute, somebody decided to do a blood test, and I was like at a hemoglobin of 7 when the normal is 14. Found out I was anemic. I was on 3 doses of iron a day for 10 days. I was able to drop 6 minutes off of my 2 mile run. I
Oh my
was at
God.
this time, I was turning heads because it was like a miracle,
Yeah.
Um, during the time I was anemic, I didn't know I was anemic, so I was training like crazy. I was fit, I was cut, you know, um,
Yeah.
I was in shape for the most
Yeah.
part. It's just I didn't have any iron. I didn't have any oxygen
Oh
in my
my
blood.
gosh.
So, but
Okay.
taking the iron in just 10 days, I was able to drop a whole 6 minutes off. And every time I ran after that, it just got better and better. And I started attracting a lot of positive attention,
Yeah.
ended up getting recommended to go to the board. I won the Soldier of the Month, Soldier of the Quarter, went on a year, win the year board. And so by this time, my whole military experience had changed, because at first, just passing the PT test was okay, but now I had to
Yeah.
max. I had to come in first. And because all of these eyes were on me, it really did a lot for getting favor, with higher ups. And
Right.
I was encouraged to re-enlist. And even though I had just extended to come back to the States and my plan was to get out, this newfound fever, this newfound motive, I'm a soldier, and
Yeah.
in the pack and winning boards and all of this. And so it made me consider staying in. And that's what actually caused my first re-enlistment to stay in
Okay.
the and so that experience,
Which
and
makes
just nothing
sense.
but good stuff up after that. Opportunities opened. I'm first on the line to take them. Got to do a lot of things. I was an instructor. I went on to be a combatives instructor. Made
Wow.
E7, I think in 9 years, and got promoted to E8 while I was in PA school.
Wow. That's
I got
amazing.
selected for PA school with 4 waivers, and that's pretty competitive PA school.
Yeah.
And to have 1 waiver, is kind of iffy, but to have 4 is unheard of. And I don't know anyone who's ever gotten selected for PA school with 4 waivers. But
So that means waivers, meaning like potential red flags against you getting in, right?
right,
Okay.
disqualifiers, things that would otherwise disqualify you. I'd have to write a letter saying why you should consider me, even though I'm not qualified
Mhm.
in this area. I
And
was
you got in. It
too,
was meant to be.
I was too old. You have to be under 40 when you commission. So
Mhm.
I think I was 41 when I commissioned, either 41 or 42. But I had
Okay.
to apply for a waiver for that. I had too many years in service because they were looking for 10. I think if you had over 10 years, it was a disqualifier. But when I applied, I had 12. Um, I had a history of asthma, which is a medical disqualifier for commissioning.
Mhm.
And I did not have all the prerequisites. I had to come up with a plan to take the prerequisites in between my acceptance time and the time that PA school actually started.
Wow. Okay. That is very impressive. That's really good. But like you said, it was meant to be. And was there something that triggered you to want to go to PA school? Because going from a dental tech to medical equipment tech, or what's the actual name?
Medical maintenance. At the
Medical.
time, I think it was called medical equipment repair technician. I'm not
Okay.
sure what the official title of it is
Gotcha.
now, but we worked on medical equipment.
Was there
I was an
something, I guess, in
instructor
the environment that pushed you to want to pursue PA school?
when it actually just dropped as something in my spirit, literally dropped in my spirit. As an instructor, I would have all of the correspondence coming in, going over the email, I'd be able to see it. So when they started accepting applications for PA school, which I never considered, the email got my attention. And in my mind, I'm saying, no, I could never do that. I'd never be qualified. And, all of these excuses not to do it. But the more I did that in my mind, the heavier the unction became. And I remember it was on my mind, and I was walking down the hall to start class. We had a new set of students that morning. And so, normally on the first day of school, everybody would go around the room and introduce themselves. And during this time, I had at least two students to say, yes, blah, blah, blah. My mom is a PA and my dad is a PA. This PA just kept coming up. And
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. It was already in my spirit. And so by the end of that day, I worked up the nerve to ask my sergeant major to write a recommendation letter. And I remember telling him, I said, if you write this, I'm pretty sure I'll get accepted because I believe God is telling me to do this. And I know I must have sounded crazy, but I was so, convicted, I
Yeah.
had that conviction and I was right, applying there were a lot of obstacles to applying. I think my package was like this thick, cost me
Oh my God.
$65 to mail. Because I
Oh
had
my
such
God.
such a military history. Normally people with that much behind them are not candidates for PA school.
Hmm.
At the time I was a E7, and I think when I got to PA school, most of the enlisted people were like E4 and E5 and junior enlisted. And so I had this thick old application with all of these medical records and, things that I had to get there. And so there was one letter that I was missing. And back up a little bit, where I was stationed as an instructor was actually an Air Force base. And so there were not a lot of Army administrative resources. If we wanted to get something done, we had to drive up to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. There
Wow.
was this one letter that I think maybe 3 days before the deadline to mail it in, I found out that I was missing. And I had to get that from Fort Sill. So I was given permission to drive up there. When I got there, the office was closed. But I was
No.
standing there, I'm like, Lord, now what? And it just so happened someone was walking by asking me who was I looking for. I told them what I needed. They were like, I think I can do that for you. And I was able to get my letter. Just
Wow.
so happens that that person was walking by while I was standing at this empty desk full of, this office full of empty desks with the lights off. I'm just standing there wondering what to do now. But a person was walking by and they were like,
Crazy.
I can do that for you. And so, that was the last thing that I needed for my application. I was able to get it mailed off and got accepted.
Amazing. And then you said 10 years as a PA?
I spent 10 years take that back. Including the PA school, yes, but I
Okay.
think I only practiced for 6 years. Yeah, it was
Okay.
6 years.
And then when did you officially retire from the army?
September 2018 was my official retirement date.
Congratulations. So, and you are still at Fort Polk. You mentioned this earlier that you never thought you would come back to Fort Polk, and now you have been at Fort Polk for 15 years. Is that right?
Going on, something like that. I think, yeah, we got here in 2010. So, yeah.
And so, in your time, I mean, do you feel like there's a reason you are still at Fort Polk? Is that I mean, there's so many things that were never in the plans. Obviously, God had a
Mhm.
plan, and things go for His good, and it's all for a reason. Do you feel like there's a reason you've been at Fort Polk for as long as you have?
I know that there is a reason. I don't know fully, it's still yet to be seen. I know we were walking in obedience. We lived on posts. We moved on posts in 2010 and we stayed there till like 2016. We had no idea that we'd be like buying a house or even retiring for that matter.
Hmm.
But as things started to unfold, my illness started to catch up with me. All of a sudden, there were issues with our house on post, and we never had issues before. And,
Yeah,
they were digging in our backyard and just making things so inconvenient. And so, for the
yeah.
first time, like 2016, for the first time, I'm like, let's move off post. And even then, I didn't realize it would be our permanent forever home. But
Hmm.
as that started happening, we were looking for a house and, weighing, well, I guess if I do retire, maybe we can come back here. Okay, but now it turns out my orders are canceled because I have these conditions that I'm still working with. I was actually on orders to leave, but they got canceled because it didn't look like, it was looking more and more like I would get med boarded, and which is what
Oh,
happened.
okay. Oh,
But
okay.
so I tell people the
Yeah.
army broke up with me. I didn't break up with the army because I planned on 30 years.
God, you said you planned on staying how long?
I planned on staying in the army for 30 years.
30 years. Okay. So
That
how
was my
many years did you end up serving?
total 24 years and 9 months to include that
20.
National Guard time. So it was 22 years on active duty from
Wow. So you did get to officially retire, even though it was earlier than you planned on. You got to
yeah.
officially retire. Okay.
And
That's really
everything
good.
worked out. Everything really worked out. I had no idea what the med board process entailed. I never planned on
Mhm.
doing anything like that, but everything worked out.
And since getting out, I mean, obviously you're still well taken care of by VA, TRICARE with retirement. You still have access to all that to be able to get health taken care of. Okay.
Yes.
How has it been since you got out? How do you feel?
I feel like I'm in a state of, limbo. I am compelled to keep my license. Right now I'm doing studying for, to retake my certification test. And but I don't know about returning to what I left. And what I mean is that I'm a little bit disappointed in the way people do medical care, healthcare these
Mhm.
days. It's a lot different from what we're taught, what actually happens versus what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Um, Physical exams, you hardly get people to even lay their hands on you now, and they just kind of diagnose paper.
Yeah.
Um, and they don't really give you that much time. You get like 20 minutes and you're supposed to cover all of this stuff that you really can't cover. And so I say that to say I really don't know what I'll be doing. I would like to help people. I would be in a capacity to help people. I don't believe that I can help people with the system they design now to where providers are seeing 30 to 40 patients a day. There's no way you can actually help someone um, just talking to them really fast for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
not really examining them, not really going into their medical history. And So it
Mhm.
wasn't like that when I was trained in actually in my first practice, which was in in the battalion.
Gotcha. Yes, I could see how that's different. Do you think it's just because there's maybe not enough providers, or is this just kind of a system that's changing as it goes?
I believe it's greed. Truthfully, I believe it's greed. Insurance companies, they want to make money, but they have to pay, but in order to satisfy them, the providers have to do so much. We have to talk about smoking, we have to talk about behavioral health, we have to talk about your chronic issues. And then if we have time, we can talk about what brought you here today. If I
Yeah.
still have your attention,
Mhm.
after judging you by telling you're too fat, but but no, I wouldn't say it like that. But there's so many things that we have to
You have
cover.
much more tact. You have much more tact than that.
But I'll be like, look, I'm fat too. No, but just because I'm interested in helping people, it inspired me early in my career. I'll just back up a little bit. I remember actually helping this patient because she came in for a sinus issue, but it was only because I did a thorough physical exam on her. Long story short, she ended up having thyroid cancer, which would have never, she didn't have any symptoms. It was only because of the way that, I palpated her throat and I felt something was kind of off. Didn't know what was going on, but, the workup would later reveal that it was thyroid cancer. And she wrote me this awesome letter, how grateful she was. And
Yeah.
that inspired me. That's why we're there. But I don't think I've ever had anybody to palpate my throat as much ear, nose, and well, my ENT doctor, he kind of does that, but
Mhm.
the
Yeah,
way
but
we're
how often do we go see an ear, nose, and throat doctor? Yeah.
exactly. And so what's supposed to happen does not happen more often than not. And that would be my apprehension to returning to that kind of workforce. But whatever God has planned for me, if He has plans for me to be able to use my license and certification, I don't know what capacity. So that's still,
So you have it there just in case.
yeah, yeah.
Good for you. That's awesome.
And
Okay.
the
I
desire to
didn't,
help is still there. So,
yes. I truly believe that, I mean, God can use you any way. You have so many gifts and so many skills and such a heart for people that I know you'll do good wherever God places you.
yeah.
Um, is there any stories or strife that you'd be willing to share about from your time in the military or since leaving the military? If you have any experiences that you would love to share.
I would actually. And I know when I get off, I'm gonna be like, darn, I should have told her about this too. But there've been so many. Start on my deployment, I remember a powerful lesson that God taught me. We were in Iraq and we had a vehicle accident, and in this accident, the vehicle I was riding on, we took out like three tires, and so we had to stand on the side of the road, and everybody that was in the vehicle had to form what we call a perimeter. We're looking outward with our weapons pointed outward, making sure that the people changing the tire were safe. When you're on perimeter guard like that, you have what you call a sector, a
Mhm.
certain place that you're supposed to monitor. You don't have to look at anybody else's sector because the people standing over there are responsible for that sector. But as we stayed there for about 2.5 hours while they changed those tires. I remember God speaking to me because at first I was really, really scared, but then He started talking to me and just kind of drew my attention as to what was actually happening. And in the spirit, the lesson is that we as a body of Christ, we are always on perimeter guard. We have to we have to be at our post because if we give into our emotions or for some reason decide that we don't want to do what God tells us to do, then part of that perimeter is going to be broken. I remember him telling me that because we get in these ruts and sometimes we say, I don't feel like doing PWC. I don't feel like doing the choir. It's not about my feelings. It's about where God put me on the perimeter. And if I'm not guarding it, then something is going to go unchecked. And so he taught me, just like I'm watching my perimeter here to keep my brothers and sisters safe, and I have to rely on them to watch my back to do their part. I remember learning that lesson, and I was like, wow. And in the quiet, there were no voices. This
Yes.
was just going on in my spirit. I'm like, wow. If I allow somebody to come through this part, then the whole perimeter has been compromised.
Right. That's amazing. I've never heard someone put it that way before, and I love that analogy of the body of Christ to what it's like literally defending your brothers and sisters. That's beautiful. That's really
Yes.
cool.
Oh, and friendly fire. He taught me about my tongue, because if we're in that perimeter and we do get shot, the last person that we expect it to be is from somebody standing in the perimeter. We
Right.
we we'd feel more comfortable if maybe they were overrun or something and the enemy got in and shot us. But how would it feel to know that somebody in the perimeter is the one that shot you? Friendly fire.
Yeah.
And so that taught me about like talking about people. Uh,
Right.
you don't want to be the cause of somebody's pain. So you really have to monitor your behavior and your conduct, and just don't let your good be evil spoken of.
Right. Right. And there's a verse about that, right? That like your words, I'm gonna mess it up, but your words are like a weapon.
In the book of James, I think it talks about the tongue as being like a weapon, like no man can tame it. I think that's in
Yes.
James.
And there's something else about being hung by the tongue, like how powerful your words can be. And sometimes you don't realize how strongly it can affect people, the things that you say.
Mhm.
And there's a book I've read called Hung by the Tongue, but I know it's biblically based on that verse of being hung by the tongue and being careful with what comes out of your mouth because it's
Mm.
strong. Yes, that's
No
really
friendly
cool.
fire. Someone's
No
going to get
friendly
taken
fire
out. You don't want it to be by a friend.
for sure. Wow, that's really powerful. I mean, when you put it that way in terms of friendly fire, that's really powerful. You're just dropping lots of wisdom. This is beautiful. Do you have any other stories? I know we have a little bit more time. Do you have any other stories that are on your heart that you would like to share?
Just that God is real. My message to any believer to realize that God is real is not just a concept. We can conceptualize if we're not reading our Bibles, um, kind of dream up this God who kind of agrees with everything that we do and it's always, happy with everything that in our lives. But that God is not the God of the Bible. The God of the Bible is really real. To get to know him, to pursue him. He's obligated. He said, if you draw close to him, he will draw close to you. And so, what I would just leave with anybody is just prioritize your relationship with God above everything, above, selfish desires, goals, dreams, family. Just if you prioritize your relationship with God, He is faithful to bless you with abundant life, and not just materially, but the peace that comes along with it, the clarity, the the right not to get discouraged or to worry or to fret, because that regardless of what happens, he's using everything for your good. That's kind of a piece that you really can't explain, but it's so important in the life of a believer. We struggle the most when we try to do things our way but yet proclaim the that God is Lord of our lives. As
Exactly.
once we make that declaration, it's like we have a big old X on our back from the our enemy. And if we are not fighting God's way, then we're gonna struggle a lot more than we have to. So I would just encourage people to know the word, know the God of the Bible, study your word, seek him, have a prayer life because it makes a difference. It makes a difference. There were many times where, if it wasn't for my relationship with God, I would have been in all and out panic. not knowing what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Um, I remember, if I can back up a little bit, I
Sure.
remember my PCS from Fort Bragg to Wichita Falls, which is where I was an instructor.
Okay.
I had to, I was a single mom too at the time. I forgot to mention that, but my son had a lot of medical issues. He had a lot of behavior issues in school. I had medical issues.
Mhm.
Um, I had a house that I had to prepare to sell. There were things that my job was requiring. And like I said, I was an E6 and I was up for promotion for the first time. And so there were a bunch of things that I had to get squared away in my records. And long story short, my list of to-do things before our PCS, this was maybe about 3 weeks before our PCS, it was so insurmountable. And at one point, I actually broke down and cried, because I really didn't know what to do. And this was after I was trying to get a trailer hitch attached to my car so that I can do my partial Diddy move. And this was just part of what was going on. But when they went to attach it, it turns out that the people who had repaired it from a previous car accident, they didn't repair my frame. They just did the outside body work and they charged me for it. And so they could not attach the trailer, and so I had invested all this time in trying to make this happen. And I remember when they told me that it couldn't happen, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember sitting on a bumper and I just started to cry. And I remember feeling the reassurance. And what that voice said is one way or another, this will happen. 3 weeks from now, you will be in Texas. I don't, and so it just kind of, it brought me out of, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? How am I going to get all of this done till okay, Lord, you're going to lead me one day at a time, one step at a time.
Mhm.
Long story short, I had people from my church to come and help me prepare my house. Um, I ended up driving a U-Haul and pulling my car, which actually saves
There
miles on
you
my
go.
car,
Yeah.
and, and actually provided me more space than what I would have needed had I gotten a trailer, because I
Yeah.
kind of underestimated the stuff that I had to move.
Mhm.
Um, During this time when things were getting really really rough, I was having to go to medical appointments for my son, and I remember having to go to what we used to call the personnel service branch, for personnel service battalion. It was a PSB. They don't have those anymore because now everything is incorporated within the unit, like the S
Okay.
shop. But at
Gotcha.
first it's the whole battalion that handled all this stuff, and you had to make an appointment. I had to get my DA photo done. I had to get my records, make sure my records match my uniform. And I remember thinking that that was all done and I didn't have to do anymore, only to find out that one of our awards had been revamped. They had given us the award for our Iraq deployment. And we had it changed for some reason, the qualifications changed and it changed into a different ribbon. And I had to, so my picture did not match my records. And
Oh no.
I remember saying, Lord, I don't have time to go back. I had to make an appointment for that. And now you're
Right.
asking me to make another appointment and go back, and I'm running out of time. But I remember God telling me, go back, I'll make it happen. And I was able to get in, got everything squared away. And I mentioned that because it was only about 3 months after I got to my new duty station that I found out that I actually got picked up. And it was the first look. Normally that didn't happen,
Yeah.
Normally, you don't get picked up on your first look, but I actually got picked up on my first look. But that would not have happened had I said, just forget it, back when
Yeah.
things were really, really. And so it was only because I had a relationship with God that I can hear him say, do go to that appointment, and so, or do make that appointment, even though I
Yeah.
was discouraged and I didn't think that I had time to do it. So, he led me through my career. Just if I ever write a book, it's going to be called Breadcrumbs because that's how he led me through my career. From the first time that I figured out that I can actually be an NCO, after failing all of those PT tests, now I'm shining bright in front of everybody, and the commander's looking, and the battalion commander's looking because at first she was failing, but now she's beating everybody. She's maxing her PT tests. Now she's Soldier of the Year, and so after all of that, it just That was that if it hadn't been for that, I wouldn't have even re-enlisted the first time.
Wow.
So,
I like
you know,
that. Breadcrumbs. Maybe that's what we'll have to name this episode. Breadcrumbs with AJ. I
it
love that.
there's just so much to it, but God really made the difference. My mindset coming in wasn't how it is now. I didn't come in, I didn't join to serve my country. I joined to have a paycheck. That
Yeah.
that concept of serving my country didn't come until later, till he showed me the purpose and why I was there. And as I started to go through the NCO ranks, he taught me how to take care of soldiers and set them up for success. And one more thing I could share.
Yeah.
I'm, are you familiar with the Expert Field Medical Badge, the EFMB badge?
Yes. Yes, I
Okay,
am.
so I believe that actually had a lot to do with, my later success because I had that and it kind of distinguished me. So maybe
I
why
know that's not easy to get at all.
I had no intention of even trying because I didn't think that I could ever do anything like that. The only thing that made me do that was the fact that both of my soldiers, I had two soldiers at the time, wanted to go out. And as an NCO, I could not, in good conscience, recommend them or send them anywhere that I wasn't willing to go first. And so, with the intention of not making it through, I actually applied for the EFMB badge. Miracle by miracle, day by day, God saw me through that course, and I ended up getting my EFMB badge. My soldiers didn't
First
get it
time?
first
You got
time,
it first time? Oh,
first time, and it was
love.
such from the I struggled with night land navigation. All during practice, I never found a point at night. Even the one that was 25 meters in front of me, I would always miss it. On the night of the qualification, I actually had a 2,500-meter point that I had to go out at night and find. And at Fort Bragg, you're climbing through ravines and navigating thick terrain. And I remember on that course thinking, okay, this is gonna make me, if God allows me to find this point, that means I'm gonna get my badge. And that's how I was talking to him, because at
Mhm.
first I didn't know that that was an assignment. I was only doing it because I sent my soldiers. But God started speaking to me. I was like, well, I hadn't found one during practice. Lord, if you help me find this 2,500-meter, I will have the faith to believe that you're going to get me through the rest of this course.
Yeah.
And the way he did it, the ingenuity he just kind of dropped in my spirit. I remember walking through the woods and coming to this big old ravine, looking down, wondering how I'm going to get across. And my only option was to actually go further downstream to where it wasn't as deep. But before I went, I remember seeing a piece of engineer tape on the ground. You know how when they're doing construction, they have that pink and the yellow tape? I saw
Yeah.
it on the ground and I tied it around the tree that I was standing in front of. So when I went down, I was able to walk back up until I saw the engineer
Find
tape.
it.
And what I did was, I'm not sure if you know what a back azimuth is, but a back azimuth is 180 degrees from the direction you're going.
Okay.
So if you're actually going at 0 degrees, and a back azimuth would be 180 because it's just the opposite.
Okay.
But I didn't plan on it. So when I saw this, I shot a back azimuth of my original point. And I figured if I do that, I'd be right at the place where I was going, if I did an about face. And
Right.
so when I shot the back azimuth and I lined it up with that pink ribbon that I found on the ground, I was able to turn around and continue on the same course, even though I had just traveled about 25 meters
Yeah.
down this creek and climbed and came back up. And I just thought it was
Love it.
awesome because no one's that's not in the book.
Yeah.
God, God helped me, he helped me apply the things that I picked up and use it. And when I walked up on that point at night, I was in such disbelief. I couldn't believe it. But from then on, everything that came after that came with prayer and faith, to include the
Wow.
12-mile road march.
Yeah.
I never even did that in practice. The longest I could keep that up was like 7 miles, that pace. And so I wasn't
Wow.
counting actually making it to the road march. But because he allowed me to find that point, I knew he wanted me to. And I'm like,
Yes.
but it's just, it goes back to my relationship with God because he led me through everything. And when I got that badge, I do believe that that was a big factor in me being selected for the instructor school, where I was there to read the email about the PA school applications. I don't know if
I
that
see
would
what
have
you
come
mean. It's
down.
those breadcrumbs along the way, taking you where God needed you. That's incredible.
Yes, and there are a bunch of PA stories. I had a battle buddy. She actually nicknamed me Miss Divine Intervention.
I love that. I love that.
But
I love your heart so much, and I love the spirit and the faith and the joy that you bring to everything. Ever since I've known you, I've felt that being around you, and I love that so much. And I feel it even through the screen. I can
yeah,
feel it, and I know I see now, like you said, what you mean by the breadcrumbs and like God taking you where you needed to be, and even all those little things like helping you find a point in land navigation, night
yes,
land navigation. That's
yes.
amazing. That's so
That
cool.
communicates that I want you to pass this course, which I didn't know at first. I just thought I was,
You
you know.
were there for moral support. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Wow. So yes, I'm familiar with AFMD because my husband also has that badge. I will say he
Okay.
did not pass first time, so I know how hard that is, and that is really incredible. I know he will love your story as well so much. That's really cool. But yeah, thank you so much for everything you shared and for sharing your heart and your faith and your stories. I am so, so, so grateful for you and grateful that you were willing to come on here on my podcast and share a little bit of your story. And hey, if tonight you're thinking there's more you needed to share that you missed, we can do this again because I would love to chat more to you about all of this. But
Yeah.
we need to call it there. I can't wait to see this whole episode put together, but thank you so much for coming on Military Wife Life and Strife and sharing with me.
Stay encouraged. He's faithful. You can depend on him.
Thank you, AJ. Thank you so much.
I am so grateful for the chance to get to chat with AJ. And if any of you have questions for her that you would love for her to answer, send them my way. And I would love to have her on again and have her just talk more and pour out more wisdom and more love on all of us because she's wonderful. To connect with me and send me questions for AJ, follow me on Instagram. You can join our community there, join our conversations, and maybe tell me your story. Subscribe to this podcast if you would like to hear more military stories told by your military Shanahi. Thank you so much for listening. I am grateful for all of you. This is Heather signing off. I'll catch you next time.